Yeah, I've not heard anything more about possible hearings, but I hear both sides. David actually is one of the very responsible legislators that thinks about that kind of thing. We've had other legislators, though, that have said just the opposite of what David said, and said we just need to get out of it completely, which that's the concern. But we'll look at this statement, and if you all have any input on it, let me know. But I think we need to maybe modify this statement at least by the next meeting. At the bottom of page 3, limitations on 1-year transaction value cap for assessments. This was something that was put in the law, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, and it's had an impact on some of these subsidized bank sales, and the tax assessors having to basically put an assessed value no higher than what the bank sells this property for, even though the bank's receiving federal insurance subsidies on this property. So we're calling for not including these transactions in their comps or in the things that they have to look at. I guess the question is, how have the assessors, to do that, the assessors have to be able to really identify this type of property, and do you all have a good way to identify those bank sales that have received insurance subsidy?
That was going to have to be part of the language, was that they were going to have to provide us that information. The issue that we see facing us now on this is that these are drying up and hurt. So this past year, I mean, the volume of those types of transactions was reduced to almost to the point where it's
not an issue.
Not much of a bearing on anything that we're doing. The market sales are far and away overwhelming the bank sales.
So I guess the question is, do we need to spend our resources pursuing this if it's not a big deal right now? I don't know. Again,
Good question. I would tend to lean toward no. You don't need to.
anybody else, your thoughts on this? Again, this is a difficult topic because you got to do a lot of education to get the legislators to understand the difference between a regular foreclosure and one that's being subsidized with federal money.
I would agree with him that in terms of the amount of time invested for what's going on in the market, it's not worth it. I know in our county, you get that form that says, was this a regular sale, was it a special sale, et cetera, and you identify that as a foreclosure, and you send it back in. To the consumer, there's a slight advantage because you get that reduction that first, or actually the second year you're paying taxes on it first year. But they're drying up, and part of the real estate business, we're seeing it go away, so I wouldn't waste so much time.
Okay, so I may recommend that we delete that. Okay. Okay, on page, let's see, page 5.
We still have the forest land
Yes.
protection.
Okay, at the bottom, page 4, excuse me. Forest Land Protection Act grants. One of the good news changes that was made this year at the General Assembly is they did provide some additional funding to try to catch up on the forest land protection grants that are owed to the counties. I've had some questions about when are we going to get that money. It was put in the supplemental budget, which should be before the end of their fiscal year this year. They're supposed to spend that money, so it should be before July 1 that they pay out those additional grant funds. The reason I highlight this statement is because we're calling for them to catch up. There's two issues here: catching up with what they owe us, and then staying caught up, staying current. And I think that's always going to be a concern, at least in the near future, is them continuing to get behind again and needing to stay current. But we may want to add some provision, just slightly modify this position to basically thank the General Assembly for providing the additional revenues, and then encouraging them to keep current on their obligation to pay the counties these forest land protection grants. So I highlight just to say, not that I recommend that we take it out. I'm just saying we may want to modify it a little bit to reflect what happened this year.
It's a shame we have to thank you for doing a good job.
Yeah.
If I didn't turn in my landfill tax on time, and I got 2 years behind, it wouldn't be so generous.
I agree, but
Yeah.
whatever.
But,
Anything else on ad valorem tax before we move off of ad valorem? Anybody has? Okay. We're going to go now into the sales tax section. The first one in the sales tax section we've already talked about today. That's modifying the homestead option sales tax statement. We already have a statement on host, so what we talked about earlier would be a modification to this statement, and we'll work on that. The next item at the bottom of page 5 is local option sales tax. Again, we've already talked about this issue, and whatever comes out of that joint ACCG committee would need to get reflected into this statement. But I don't think we're not talking about a new statement. We're talking about modifying the existing statement that's already there. And then the next issue on page 6 deals with the Georgia Agricultural Tax Exemption Program, GATE. As you know, there was legislation passed this year by the General Assembly that will help with some of the abuse. It doesn't go nearly as far as we'd like for it to go. So it's questionable what kind of impact it will have. But I think in light of the legislation that passed, that we at least need to review this policy statement. And I think there may be a few things that are on here that were in the legislation that passed, and we need to take those off. But there may be some other things that we need to add to the statement. But we need to go back and reevaluate this statement now that we've had some time to see how GATE's impacting us at the local level and update it. So I'm not suggesting that we remove it. I'm just suggesting that we probably need to update this statement based on current situation. Anybody have any thoughts on this statement? It's a tough one. It's one that some people would like to maybe do away with altogether, but the law's out there, and I think the best we can do now is just to continue to try to make it better.
We said about a lot of things.
Right.
Well, the enforcement of it seems to have been the issue in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to check the log trucks should be using the gate card, and the chicken transfer trucks that are using the gate card. Much less an individual that does have some land, but doesn't use it as agricultural.
Right.
There's no checks and balances in enforcement.
Well, for instance, one of the things that we asked for in our statement that did get done is, under the old law, you could simply qualify by having property in CUVA, nothing else. Just that alone qualified you. That was removed from the law. Now that by itself doesn't qualify you for a gate card. So there's been a little bit that's done, but still a lot more that probably needs to be done. We'll continue to work on that. And again, offline, if any of you all have any recommendations on how we can improve this statement, just call me, let's talk about it, let me know, and we'll incorporate it into the draft statement we bring back to the committee. The next thing at the top of page 7, disclosure of local sales tax information. GMA and ACCG put a big push on this this year. It was called the FACT Act. We both put a lot of capital behind pushing this legislation at the General Assembly. We didn't even get it out of committee. There was a committee hearing on it. There was a lot of discussion on it. I'll just be honest with you, though. There was a lot of pushback. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce came out against this change that we were asking for. The leadership didn't seem to want to do it. So I just bring that to your attention because we have a position asking for this. We now have tried it and really put forth a pretty big effort in trying to get it done. And we were a long ways from even moving the ball, much less getting it across the...
Opposition from Department of Revenue on it?
Yeah, well, kind of silent opposition, but yes, they were definitely working against it behind the scenes. So just something I want you to all think about between now and the next meeting is, do we need to modify this and leave it in here? Or do we need to take it out? But under the current environment, there doesn't seem to be any appetite for changing state law to give you more information about your local sales taxes. But I mean, again, we got a lot of things in here that we know we can't get done, that we just have them in here because we want to have the message there, and we can do that. But I want to make sure you all understand that this has been tried and not very successful.
If we leave it in there, if the opportunity comes up in 2 or 3 years, it's still in our policy. Or
Yeah, things could always change one day,
Yeah.
but I don't think we're going to get it done in the near future. Michael, you have any comments on that? I know you all put a lot of capital behind this too, but it seems like we really ran into a brick wall on this.
Yeah, David Knight, he expressed interest in talking to us about a scaled down version. You know, our position is that these sales taxes are passed locally, therefore it is our information, it is the people that doing something, I don't know exactly what yet, but we're gonna see if he can't come up with a scaled down bill for next year, good, to maybe get us some.
Yeah, well, we'll work with GMA and David Knight to see if there's some consensus that can be reached, and if there is, we'll bring that back to you at the second meeting, if there's something scaled down that we can do, but it's gonna have to be much different than what we proposed this year. The next item we've already talked about, that's titling boats and putting them under the TAVT system. So I told you earlier, we had a statement on that, but based on the work we do over the summer with the industry, we may want to modify this statement. Let's see, flip over to the last, let's see, page 8. Last item, financial institutions business license taxes. Again, we talked about this already today about including credit unions, and the committee has decided that that's probably not a wise use of our resources. This does not have anything to do with the credit unions. However, if we did that, we'd probably want to incorporate it in this statement. This statement talks about how you allocate the tax based on where the headquarters are versus the branches are, and the amount or rate of the tax. So I don't think there's anything here to really look at unless somebody wants to recommend a change before the next meeting, since we're not going to add credit unions to it. Anything else that the committee wants to bring up? Anything in this platform that we haven't covered that you'd like to bring up? Again, we weren't able to go through every item statement by statement because we had so many new things to talk about. Okay, well, we'll set up these subcommittees thank you for those of you that volunteered, and we'll get that done. And JoAnn, I'll turn it back over to you.
Just thank you for coming. Thanks to our host, Henry County. Is there a commissioner here from Henry?
I don't think
No?
so.
Okay, and thanks to ACCG staff and for putting all this together, and have a safe trip home.
And I want to remind, if
Oh,
I
yes.
may, Madam Chair,
Oh,
please
vote
take home
next